In life, I loved reading 18-plus storybooks, and somehow ended up corrupted. After death, I became a lustful ghost, day and night coveting my freshly wedded, fair-skinned husband. Taking advantage of his blindness, I seized every opportunity to grope him, until one day, I set my sights on someone else. My supposedly blind sheep husband stared at me with resentment. "Darling, touch me. I'm bigger than all of them." Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. I am a short-lived human. In the prime of my youth, I met the king of hell far too soon. Longevity is my personal maid, the most loyal of all. Ever since I died, she's been weeping and wailing non-stop, and the whole household fears she might follow me to the grave. Look at her, kneeling in the dead of night, burning paper offerings for me. The master has ordered paper effigies made, so you can command them as you please in the underworld, if they don't serve you well. Don't worry about me, miss, I'm still young. I sat on the desk, swinging my legs back and forth, and let out a mocking laugh upon hearing this. Heartless little wretch. With a flick, I blew out the candle. Changsho closed her eyes and shouted, "If the young mistress finds those paper figures too clumsy, I'll burn a few more clever and sensible ones for you." She lit the candle again, and with a flicker, it went out once more. Changsho finally realized, "Miss, do you have some unfinished wish?" To tell the truth, I do have one lingering concern. In my past life, I was frail and sickly, never stepping beyond the inner courtyards. My only hobby was reading those storybooks. Accidentally, it grew crooked. It's just a pity about that book I stayed up all night reading, right at the part where the young uncle was lured into the widow's tent, and things were about to get steamy. Changsho, ever my thoughtful little helper, sneaked the book into the morning hall with his sallow face full of mischief. The book was tossed into the brazier, and the candles were relit. This bizarre scene, oddly enough, made Changsho breathe a sigh of relief. "What are you burning?" A man appeared at the door, immediately catching my attention. I almost forgot, today is my wedding day. My father consulted a fortune teller to match our birth dates and found me a live-in son-in-law to ward off bad luck. Little did I know. Before I could even meet the groom, I passed away first, but no one told me my husband would be this handsome. Dressed in simple hemp clothes, his face was exquisitely beautiful, with striking features, noble brows and eyes that were pure yet unmistakably masculine, born with a beauty like jade trees and jasper branches. Changsho was startled and stammered out a random excuse. "Young master, that, my lady loves reading. She's well read, very well read." To be fair, Changsho wasn't wrong. When it comes to romantic novels, I truly deserve the title of being well read. It must be said that good looks make all the difference. Even a simple raised eyebrow from Shin Qingchen carried an air of charm. He glanced at the brazier once more, then recited in the most solemn tone, begging my widowed sister-in-law to pity me, your young mistress reads such a wide variety of books. Changsho was on the verge of a breakdown. With a stomp of his foot, he covered his face and ran away. I was feeling quite embarrassed myself, then glanced back at the coffin. Perfect. If the corpse isn't embarrassed, then the embarrassment belongs to others. I floated along behind Shin Qingchen, drifting aimlessly. He entered the room, called for hot water, and without a word began removing his clothes. I let out an ah, and stopped in my tracks, then scurried away sheepishly, through a screen. I vaguely caught sight of a man's bare arm and the clothes that were about to slip past his waist. Phew, that was close. I almost got an eyeful. The heat in my cheeks kept rising, and I hurriedly fanned myself to cool down. Then it occurred to me, since I'm already a ghost, what's wrong with being a bit lustful? By the time I came to this realization, the sound of splashing water had already risen behind me. Once again, I passed through the door, in the bathtub. The misty steam revealed the man's coldly elegant features, his dark hair and snow-white skin resembling an untainted deity. My eyes lit up with excitement. "My dear father, is this my husband? How dashing! This is incredible." The pretty boy curled one corner of his lips. He was actually smiling. That single smile could topple dynasties. I shuddered, regaining a shred of rationality. Wait, why is he smiling? I floated back and forth in front of him with hands on my hips. Huh. On such a sorrowful day, you can still smile even though I'm dead. Outside the door, passing maids whispered among themselves. I heard the groom is a scholar, and might even go to the capital for the imperial exams. These scholars all have their pride. How could he agree to become a live-in son-in-law? You don't know the whole story. He didn't hold back with our master, demanding a huge sum of money. Haven't you heard of the 3 great joys for a man? Promotion, wealth, and a dead wife. He got 2 of them overnight. No wonder this widower got such a bargain. The words were laced with sarcasm. Even Shin furrowed his brows. Oh, I see. Could this person be waiting to seize my family's property as a widower? I stood my ground confidently. Our Sioux family never engages in losing deals. If you dare to take my family's property, I'll take advantage of you. I moved closer and whispered in Shinshin's ear. If you agree, I'll count to 3, don't blink. 3, Shinshin agreed. Since we're husband and wife, of course I should properly appreciate your body. I felt completely at ease with this power and sex transaction. I shamelessly surveyed the man's physique, his sexy collarbones, the subtle rise and fall of his lean muscles with each breath, his glistening abs. He tilted his head slightly, his jaw clenched, looking shy as if trying to avoid something. It only makes one want to ravage him even more. A scene from a novel he'd read automatically surfaced in his mind. A younger sister hiding in her brother-in-law's bathtub, engaging in a passionate battle for 300 rounds. Absolute masterpiece. They say if a man's nose is like a hanging gallbladder, what's below should be big too. Gazing further down, I swallowed hard. This isn't right, isn't it too indecent? It's my eyes that won't obey me, not that I'm deliberately looking. Chinchin, are you asleep? An elderly voice came from outside the house, shattering the romantic thoughts in my mind. Father is here. In the brief moment I turned my head, Shinchin had already put on his undergarments. Dad came alone, a white-haired man seeing off his black-haired child. Looking much older, my dad actually dotes on me a lot. Don't be fooled by his reputation as the decisive and powerful richest man in the capital. Over the years, he went to great lengths to have a child, so he treasures me immensely. Add to that the fact that I was born prematurely and have always been frail, so my dad has always been very attentive to my needs. Father has come this time to ask Shinchin about his future plans. Since you've married into our Sioux family and become Bao'er's husband, you are my son-in-law, even though Bao'er has yet to meet you. At this point, Father paused for 2 breaths, looking up as sorrow overwhelmed him. Bao'er would surely like you if she met you. In the future, do you still intend to pursue scholarly honors? Shinchin replied without hesitation. Naturally. Understanding Shinchin's thoughts, Father proposed to provide him with food, clothing, shelter, and financial support. But there was one condition. My daughter Weir was born to never suffer the slightest grievance. You must promise me that even if you become a high-ranking official in the future, Weir will be your only wife. If you agree to this condition, you may freely use the wealth of the Sioux family, and after 100 years, it will all be yours. How could Shinchin agree to such a humiliating and disgraceful agreement? His father was truly asking too much. Shinchin tapped his fingers on the table, pondering for a long while. Fine, I will take 20% of the Sioux family's profits every month. He actually agreed. Father frowned slightly but agreed nonetheless. 20% of the profits. Shinchin really had the audacity to demand such a lion's share. This is taking advantage of the Sioux family's lack of successors. I initially thought Father's request might be too harsh. After all, it's practically condemning a man to a living widowhood. Now it seems this person is truly blinded by money. After Father left, Shinchin blew out the candle and went to bed, overcome with rage. I kicked out and straddled Shinchin. Humph. How dare you bully my father? If I live, I'll work you to death, drain you dry, and squeeze you lifeless. I'll make you beg for mercy every night. Shinchin suddenly burst into a violent cough, pulling the quilt over himself until he was wrapped up like a silkworm cocoon. Is summer really that cold? Once the mourning period ended, Shinchin began to immerse himself in studying with renewed urgency. On the desk, Stacks of classical texts and strategy books were piled high, with brushes, ink, paper, and inkstones neatly arranged. Shinchinchin rolled up his sleeves, revealing his elegant wrist bones, and picked up a brush to dip in ink, his fingers long and slender like bamboo. Shinchinchin quietly rubbed the penholder between his fingers. Sitting by the bed, I cupped my face in my hands, daydreaming. My husband's hands are so beautiful. I wish I could be that pen. In those romance novels, men seem to enjoy touching women's chests so much. I wonder how my husband's hands would feel. After muttering to myself, I cupped my breasts with both hands and gave them a squeeze. No particular sensation, really. Perhaps it was the dry weather. A stream of red blood quickly flowed from Shinchinchin's nose, dripping onto the white rice paper. How astonishing! Even someone as ethereal as an exiled immortal could still get a nosebleed. A servant came to tend to him, and he remained with his head tilted back. 2 wads of cloth stuffed up his nostrils. He looked quite comical. I couldn't help but clutch my stomach, laughing so hard I doubled over, mocking him for having such a day. Soon, my laughter turned into screams. I couldn't laugh anymore. An intense beam of sunlight struck me, causing excruciating pain to my soul. The midday sun was blazing fiercely, and it turned out to be the servant who had taken the liberty of opening the window. Shinchinchin forcefully pushed the window shut again. "The light is too harsh. I'm not used to it. Get out." His voice was icy cold. I was scorched by the sunlight, huddled by the bed, shedding tears pitifully. It hurt so much, hurt like hell. In the room, only I could hear my own sobbing, not to mention, after turning into a ghost, my cries came with an echo, eerie and quite terrifying. I suspect Shinchinchin isn't studying very well, because ever since Shinchinchin opened the book, he hasn't turned a single page. I have no idea what he's spacing out about, only occasionally pinching the bridge of his nose as if troubled by something. 9 times out of 10, the material in the book is too difficult. The entire room echoes with my wailing and howling, with a sharp sound. Shinchinchin seemed to have reached his limit. He stood up and ordered someone to fetch Changsho. "What does your young lady usually enjoy doing to pass the time?" Changsho answered blankly, "Reading storybooks." Shinchinchin pondered for a while before saying, "The same kind as last time." Changsho mumbled vaguely, "Well, it's just that kind." Shinchinchin remained silent for a long time. "No other hobbies, like embroidery, playing the zither, or calligraphy?" Changsho's voice grew even softer. "The young lady just has that preference. This longevity really diminishes your young lady's prestige. How am I supposed to establish a full-fledged image in front of my husband? I still enjoy visiting pleasure houses to listen to songs. How could I be so dull?" I began singing the 18 touches with great flair. "Reach out your hand, oh sister dear. Touch your head up high, oh sigh. The osmanthus fragrance lingers nigh." Shinchinchin's face grew darker and darker, like a husband who had caught his wife cheating. Seriously, just because his wife reads a few risque novels, he acts as if he's been deeply humiliated. Scholars are always so hypocritically high-minded. Who knows how many he's read behind my back? Besides, these novels are written by scholars like him anyway. If men can read them, why can't we women? How petty. I heard him gnash his teeth and order Changsho, "Go, burn a few more books for your young lady. The more, the better." Me, such magnanimity, not a hint of pettiness. I eagerly flipped open the newly burned storybook. I've read The Barren Mountain, The Snake Demon. And me and the holy monk bumped into me so many times they're practically worn out. After flipping through a few pages casually, I lost interest. Shinchinchin, on the other hand, was diligently reviewing his books, the only sound in the room being the quiet rustling of pages. I sighed, floated over, and reclined diagonally on the desk, staring at him intently. "Tisk tsk, those lips are so beautiful. I wonder how soft they'd feel to kiss," as if guided by some supernatural force. My fingertip brushed against his lips. At that moment, Shinchinchin's Adam's apple bobbed. My finger trailed downward, lightly tapping the Adam's apple, where there was a charming mole. I sighed. The storybooks say a man's Adam's apple is lovely to kiss, but alas, I've lived all these years without the chance. Anyway, He can't see anything right now. I licked my lips and leaned in closer. Mwah, a suggestive sound, audible only to me, escaped from my lips. My face turned bright red, and I covered it with my hands, spinning around the room in sheer excitement. I kissed him, through the gaps between my fingers. I saw Shin gripping his pen tightly, frozen in place. Not only that, but his lips were pressed tightly together, his face flushed, especially the skin from his ears down to his neck, all red. With a snap, the pen shaft broke. I was puzzled by his reaction when Shin pushed back his chair and stood up, his eyes murderous. Moments later, he poured 2 bottles of newer Hong before my memorial tablet, 2 whole bottles. Does he know that even ghosts can get drunk? My breath grew hot, my head dizzy. So this is what being drunk feels like. I don't know if it's just my imagination, but Shin seemed to glance at me. His gaze was utterly bewitching, enough to steal one's soul. I couldn't resist it. I drifted closer to him, tugging at his clothes to undress him. It's so hot, help me blow on it. Yet his expression remained blank. Then it occurred to me, of course he wouldn't react. Liquid courage emboldened this timid ghost. And I wrapped my arms around his neck again. Her fingers playfully loosened his collar. Wearing so many layers, my lord, what troubles weigh on your heart? Why not shed them all and join me for some delightful diversion? I woke rubbing my temples. With no memory of how I'd fallen asleep, the dim glow of a kerosene lamp filled the room, casting a faint yellow light as the man sat sideways by its flame. Shin wore a white undergarment with a faded blue robe draped over it, his slightly damp black hair enhancing his gentle and refined demeanor. His entire presence exuded an air of serene elegance, like a white moon swaying in the breeze. It was clear at a glance that he had just bathed. You wash it quite frequently. Approaching a bit closer, the man's bony fingers held a piece of robe. A tear had formed at the lapel, which he was carefully stitching up, his needlework quite skilled. My father knew I could only live into my teens, so he was eager to present me with the most exquisite brocade garments in the world, letting me wear them to my heart's content. Thus, I never wore clothes from the previous year, let alone old, tattered garments. This Shin not only loves money but is also quite frugal. Wait. This outfit, this tear, did I rip it? Am I that strong? No way. If I were that fierce, Shin would have been scared out of his wits by now, probably running around looking for a Taoist priest to exorcise ghosts. Just as I was pondering, father arrived. He handed Shin a large lacquered box containing last month's 20% profit. Wow, enough for this widower to splurge for a while. The next day, Shin indeed packed his belongings and prepared to leave with the large sum of money. I was curious to see how he would spend this money. I glanced around. Shin traveled light, just a bamboo backpack and an oil paper umbrella. No use letting a ride go to waste. I meandered and drifted toward the oil paper umbrella, attaching myself to it. Shin remained expressionless, taking a few leisurely steps before lifting the oil paper umbrella and flinging it to the ground. Ouch! Damn it! My coquettish cries echoed indoors as I was thrown to the ground. Pushing aside my disheveled hair, I glared resentfully at the culprit. Shin kept his gaze fixed ahead, as if oblivious, calmly storing his umbrella in the bamboo case. Covered in dust, I scrambled to my feet, my heart filled with indignation, and drifted to the window frame, hands on hips, blowing hard. A fierce wind rushed in through the window, sweeping across the desk. Crash, books flipped open one after another. Blown to the ground, Shin stepped forward to pick it up, brushing off the dust. No sooner had he placed it back on the table than the wind blew another book off the shelf. This happened several times, yet he uttered not a single word of complaint. Watching Shin scramble to gather the books, I let out a smug, delicate humph and gracefully floated toward the bamboo bookcase, just as I was about to charge headlong into it. Shin lifted his hand and moved the bamboo case onto the table. I missed my target, coming to a gradual stop before turning my head to look at Shin. The man's expression was composed, his eyes clear and bright. Coincidence, or intentional? Legend has it that the purest and kindest of people can see both the realms of the living and the dead, especially children, who are said to possess the yin-yang eyes. Could it be that he has the yin-yang eyes? But I just deliberately messed with him, and he acted as if nothing happened. Why not give it a try and find out? In an instant, a surge of ghostly energy erupted. A fierce wind raged through the room, banging doors and windows violently, and Shinchinchen's outer garment was forcefully torn away. Not a trace of panic showed on his face. It could be said there was not the slightest flaw. As he turned his head, my long hair covered my face, and my 10 nails, stained with henna juice, grew rapidly. Pushing the hair aside, bright red blood streamed down from my features. He remained composed and self-possessed. Wasn't my appearance terrifying? I instinctively looked into the bronze mirror. Dad, Shinchinchin went out. I thought he would buy a lot of things. But unexpectedly, he came back empty-handed. I didn't even make a new dress. What a strange person. That night, I seemed to have a dream. Until I saw Shinchinchin in the dream, I suddenly realized that I had entered Shinchinchin's dream. It turned out to be a ghost sending a message in a dream. This was a private school, with Shinchinchin holding a book and teaching. Apart from me, all the students below were half-grown children. What are you looking at? He suddenly stopped in front of me, pulled a book from my drawer, and his expression instantly changed. Stay after class. And so, fresh as a daisy, I was kept behind. After all the students had left, Shinchinchin slammed the book heavily on the desk and said with exasperation, "You're supposed to be a well-bred young lady. How could you read such filthy books? This must be saying what wasn't spoken during the day." Shinchinchin is a man of integrity and restraint, even though he comes from a humble background. He's like a flower on a snowy peak. I can hardly imagine him showing emotion. Although I have no practical experience, my theoretical knowledge is extremely rich. I tugged at his sleeve and called softly, "Husband." He seemed a bit dazed. "Husband?" I continued my persuasion. "Yes, you're my husband. Have you forgotten we're already married?" Taking advantage of Shinchinchin's confusion, I pushed his shoulders and straddled him. "You're so mean. How could you be so harsh with me, huh? Even I can't stand how sweet and affected my voice sounds, but Shinchinchin seems to fall for it." Hesitantly supporting my waist with his hand, his large palm is scorching hot, and the moment it touches me, my skin trembles like boiling water. I couldn't help but let out a muffled groan, collapsing weakly into his arms. "Husband, buyer wants it." He instinctively tightened his grip, squeezing my waist firmly. "Buyer." My name rolled off his lips, low and affectionate, sounding utterly delightful. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down in response. I gently caught it between my teeth, flicking the tip of my tongue out to trace slow circles. Shinchinchin let out an enticing moan. Then in a dizzying whirl, he lifted me onto the desk. Pinning my hands beneath his, he warned in a hoarse voice, "If you don't want to consummate the marriage here, then don't tempt your husband, who said I don't want to. I can do it." I almost wanted to beat my chest and roar it out. In the dream, Shinchinchin acted like a pedantic old scholar, rigid and principled. Even when it came to something as simple as taking off his pants, he stubbornly let me go. He straightened up, smoothed his slightly disheveled robe, and his gaze regained clarity. I gritted my teeth in secret, having no choice but to give up. With a sly glance, I casually asked, "Husband, where did you spend all the money given by the Su family today?" Upon hearing this, Shinchinchin actually chuckled lightly, his smile tinged with a hint of indulgence. My heart skipped a beat. Could it be for some lover? To find out exactly where Shinchinchin was spending his money, I sent another dream message to father. Father burst into tears upon seeing me. "You heartless little brat. Only remembering your father after all this time." Feeling guilty, I coquettishly replied, "Daughter just learned how to send dreams, that's all." Father gave me a knowing look and teased, "Probably couldn't walk straight after seeing that handsome husband of yours." With my secret exposed, I stopped hiding it. "He's quite good, just a bit too fond of money." Father didn't seem to mind. "What's there to fear about loving money? Your father has plenty of it." I'd be more worried if he were a lecherous man who couldn't uphold marital virtues and couldn't endure loneliness. I thought father made a good point. After sharing some heartfelt words with him, I finally left, though he was very reluctant to see me go. Father also promised to have someone follow Shinchinchin to keep a close eye on him for me. But Shinchinchin kept a very regular schedule, waking up on time every day and studying diligently on his own. Only on the day each month when he collected his allowance would he go out. Father told me that after leaving the estate, Shinchinchin headed toward Tian Mountain in the western part of the city, and after that, his men lost track of him. This situation repeated several times. And each time they inevitably lost him, I was in my father's dream, picking up a handkerchief to wipe away my tears. Father, he must have been keeping someone outside our knowledge. Who knows what secrets are hidden on Mount Tian? Father was at a loss. My dear daughter, don't cry. There's something strange about this. Let me investigate first. All right. I threw a tantrum. I don't care. I want a different husband. Why should our family's money go to that promiscuous man? Father readily agreed. It was just a moment of anger speaking. But father acted swiftly, quickly gathering a list of unmarried scholars from poor families in the capital, even hiring a painter to prepare their portraits. Changsho burned these scrolls one by one for me. When Shinchinchin discovered me, I was inhaling incense at the desk. Though I was momentarily stunned by his striking appearance once again, I still managed to let out a proud, cold snort. During this period, I did not pester him. Shinchinchin asked with an unpleasant expression, "What are you burning, Changsho?" Changsho tried to cover it up. "Nothing, just burning some random things," Shinchinchin said coldly. "Could it be that your household is considering choosing another fine son-in-law for the young lady?" He stomped out the fire in the basin, crouched down, and began examining the portraits one by one. The words that came out were harsher than ever before. "This person has shifty eyes and isn't worth a fraction of me. As for this one, with dark circles under his eyes, clearly a man of indulgence, and this one, thin lips and too much white in his eyes, obviously heartless and ungrateful. Lastly, this one's looks are passable, but alas, too short. He'd probably have to stand on tiptoes to speak to me." Finally, he sneered and challenged Changsho, "You brought these misfits. Are you sure your young lady would even glance their way?" Changsho flipped through these portraits, muttering in confusion, "They're not that bad. The men my father found for me were naturally from respectable families and handsome. It's just that Shinchinchin is too exceptionally beautiful. Without comparing them to him, each one would have been perfectly fine. Having seen such an outstanding man like him, it's truly hard to find anyone else appealing. The thought of him being so conceited that he would belittle others just makes my blood boil. He must be reluctant to part with my family's immense wealth," I said sarcastically. "No matter how others are, they're still better than a man who strays from his marriage. Virtue and talent are a man's best dowry. Alas, a man without virtue, upon closer look, is nothing special after all." Shinchinchin frowned and said, "I think there's some misunderstanding between me and your esteemed household. I don't believe it," and I stubbornly turned my face away to avoid looking at him. "What misunderstanding? If you know what's good for you, pack up and leave now. Must we wait until things get ugly?" Of course, Shinchinchin didn't leave voluntarily. Being so fond of wealth, he shamelessly chose to stay. But when father confronted him about the whereabouts of that money, he deliberately concealed the truth. He only gave a vague reason. "Sorry, I can't reveal this matter for now. What can't be said is clearly what he dares not say. There's another reason why I'm so certain he has a lover outside. Every time he returns from Mount Tian, he carries the scent of incense on him. Humph. It turns out that woman is quite the fragrance enthusiast. Considering Shinchinchin is, after all, a scholar, it wouldn't be wise for the Su family to make an enemy of him in case he rises to a high-ranking official position in the future. I decided to enter his dream once more to persuade him to leave of his own accord. This time, the dream was set deep in the mountains, where a thatched cottage stood, and Shinchinchin was hunched over a desk, writing something swiftly. "Wow, you're even dreaming about the little sprite from Mount Tian. I'll just take a look to see who this little sprite really is." I searched every nook and cranny of the room but couldn't find anything. She must not have returned yet. Shinchinchin put down his brush and looked at me in surprise. "What brings you here?" For a moment, I couldn't figure out what he took me for, so I simply said, Why can't I come? What? Afraid I'll expose your little scheme. Shin quickly walked over, a smile blooming at the corners of his lips. My wife hasn't come to see her husband in so long. I'm overjoyed. This man keeps calling himself your husband. How presumptuous. Sue bye. You must stay strong and not be swayed by his good looks. I cleared my throat and said sternly, I came here to ask for a divorce. Shinchin's smile gradually faded. Buyer, what did you say? Under his intense gaze, an invisible pressure made it impossible for me to speak the words I had planned. Somehow, the words changed as they reached my lips. If you don't want a divorce, then at least stop sending money to Tian Mountain. Can't you just cut ties with her? Shinchin refused almost without hesitation. No, Bear, you don't need to interfere in my affairs, just trust me. It seems I'm the only one who's passionate about this. Stop talking, it's just a ghost marriage. Divorcing would be good for both of us. I won't come to see you anymore. With that, I withdrew from the dream. Shinchin lay flat on the bed, his brows tightly furrowed, sleeping extremely restlessly. I hardened my heart and ignored him, turning to leave. Behind me, a hoarse voice suddenly rang out, Stop. I turned my head in a daze. The sight before me was so shocking I forgot to blink. I saw Shinchin throw off the covers and stand up, his gaze burning into me. Step by step, he walked towards me, his fingers slowly loosening the ties of his robe. It's like peeling bamboo shoots. The moment his chest was revealed, I gasped. If ghosts had heartbeats, mine would probably leap to the rafters. He didn't stop there. Letting the white undergarment slip to the ground, his entire upper body now bare before me. You. I stammered for a long time, my mind blank, unable to even remember my own surname. He looked at me with resentment and said plaintively, My lady is so cruel, willing to abandon your husband. Those four are inferior to me in every way, even down there. Darling, feel it. I'm bigger than all of them. If he hadn't said that, I wouldn't have thought to look further down. Those words seemed to carry a magical pull, drawing my gaze downward. His waistband hung loosely on his hips, the thin fabric outlining a prominent bulge, full and heavy. This size, is it too late to regret now? My breath involuntarily quickened. To hide my embarrassment, I stiffened my neck and shouted, Wearing so little is just to seduce me, isn't it? I admit your little trick has caught my attention. Shinchin asked. Then, my lady, do you still want a divorce? I still replied fiercely. No divorce. He lowered his head and smiled. My dear, you're so adorable. That smile was utterly captivating. They say love is blind. Between him and me, who's the human and who's the ghost? In a moment of passion, I agreed to Shinchin's request. Here, my father asked me in confusion, Why have you changed your mind about the divorce? Could it be that you dislike the four men I found? Don't worry, my daughter, the world is vast. And I will surely find you a handsome and well-behaved ideal husband. Well, father, I've thought it over, and I still like him. Ahem, I couldn't very well say he seems well endowed and skilled, could I? Father fell silent for a moment. Since my daughter likes him, rest assured, I will help you overcome all obstacles to ensure your happiness. I frowned slightly, vaguely sensing something amiss in my father's words. Ever since I learned that Shinchin could see me, I no longer dared to be so reckless. In the blink of an eye, it was time for him to withdraw the banknotes again. I entered his dream, feeling somewhat displeased. Are you really hiding no one outside? Shinchin chuckled mockingly. One female ghost is already enough to keep me busy. Where would I find the energy to keep another? As he spoke, he grabbed my arm with one hand and pulled me into his embrace, holding me tightly, resting his chin atop my head. His voice came out hoarse. My dear wife, you must trust your husband. I looked up at him, and he glanced back, planting a brief kiss at the corner of my lips. His eyes sparkled like stars, gentle as water. A murmur of my wife is so sweet left me utterly disoriented. No sooner had Shinchin left the mansion than my father followed with a group of men. This time, the men were different, each one a trained fighter with faces as fierce as bandits. In a desperate move, I hid inside one of their arrow quivers. From their conversation, I learned they had already uncovered the secret of Mount Tian. It is said that Mount Tian is perpetually shrouded in dense fog, with its vegetation arranged like an 8 trigrams formation, making it extremely easy to get lost. Shinchinchin clearly knew the way up the mountain. As long as we followed him closely, we could find the person he was keeping outside. I heard my father issue a cold command: listen, as soon as you see that woman, kill her first and ask questions later. In my eyes, my father had always been gentle and honest, adhering to the principle of loyalty and kindness even in business. Since when has a human life become so cheap? In my father's words, they followed Shinchinchin up the mountain with such skill that they went unnoticed. A thatched cottage came into view, covering their faces with black scarves and gripping gleaming knives. They silently surrounded the house. I shouted Shinchinchin's name while summoning a strong wind that blew dust into the masked men's eyes, disorienting them. Seizing the moment, I floated into the house. No one was inside. On the altar lay a stack of papers, the ink still wet, copying the scripture of the great vows of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Something was covered with red cloth on the altar. Not only did I see it, but father also noticed and quickly stepped forward to lift the red cloth. Stop! Shinchinchin appeared at the doorway, half of his face shrouded in shadow, his expression unreadable. My father hesitated for a moment and was about to raise his hand again when Shinchinchin quickly said, "If you still wish to be a good father, stop right now." Father's hand halted just an inch away from the red cloth, the veins on the back of his hand trembling, but in the end, he couldn't bring himself to strike. Amitba, benefactor, repent and be saved. A monk stepped forward from behind Shinchinchin. Father seemed to know him, calling him Master Liaokong, and then followed him. I wanted to follow, but Shinchinchin stopped me. Let them talk. Father has a secret. This secret is known to Shinchinchin, but not to me. What's under this red cloth? And what does it have to do with my father? Shinchinchin was unwilling to say, so I thought about lifting it. Shinchinchin knew he couldn't stop me, yet still blocked my way with his body. This matter has nothing to do with you. Where? You always forget what I've told you, he said to trust him. In the end, I still gave up on lifting the red cloth. Father didn't return until 3 days later. He returned and made an unexpected decision. First, he shaved his head and became a monk. Second, he donated all his family's wealth. The entire capital was in an uproar. I angrily confronted Shinchinchin. Is this how you make me trust you? What on earth did that bald monk say to my father? I stared at Shinchinchin, while he gazed at the bright moon. Your father is a good man. It seems these answers can only be heard from father's mouth. Father will leave for the monastery tomorrow. Tonight is my last chance. I enter father's dream. This is a densely vegetated mountain forest. At the foot of the mountain lay a broad road, where a caravan moved forward in silence. Suddenly, I saw a group of bandits charging down the hillside, surrounding the caravan on all sides. Whatever was said, the bandits were extremely brutal. In moments, they slaughtered everyone without mercy, leaving no survivors. Even women and children were not spared. Brothers, haul the loot back to the hideout. The one shouting was the bandit leader, his face strikingly similar to father's. It was father in his younger days. So, father had once been a bandit. They were murderous mountain bandits. I squatted under the locust tree all night. The sun filtered through the leaves, casting scattered spots of light that burned through my shoulders. I felt nothing, as if in a daze. The light dimmed before my eyes as Shinchinchin held an oil paper umbrella over my head. I turned my face away, uninterested in looking at him. He said, "The time for the tonsure ceremony has come. Would you like to go and see?" Not going. The Grand Hong'en temple echoed with the majestic sound of bells. I hid under Shinchinchin's umbrella, gazing at father's retreating figure. Last night in my dream, father still didn't see me one last time, only revealing the past through a fragment of memory. I knew father couldn't face me, but he's my father, no matter how flawed. He still cherished me as his most precious jewel. I blame him, yet I can't bear to blame him. The tonsure ceremony began. Father knelt before the Buddha as the abbot personally shaved his head. Shinchinchin said, "The ancestors' virtue was lacking, and the karma has brought misfortune upon their descendants. This is the reason for your early demise. But I'm already dead. Can doing these things possibly bring me back to life? Shin shook his head. All that you have consumed and used comes from ill-gotten gains. After your death, implicated by this, you were originally destined to suffer punishment in hell. Now, your father has converted to Buddhism and will spend the rest of his life atoning for his sins. All his wealth will be devoted to accumulating virtue and performing good deeds. Only through such recompense can you be reborn. Thus, Shinchin's original plan was to use the Su family's money to quietly perform good deeds. Those copied scriptures were written for the souls of the wrongfully dead. What was covered beneath that red cloth were the memorial tablets of the wronged spirits. He did all this to atone for the sins of the Su family. I fell silent for a moment. What about my father? What will happen to him? Shinchin's expression turned cold. The sins are grave, beyond the forgiveness of gods and Buddhas, condemned to eternal torment in the 18th layer of hell. The remaining fields and houses of the Su family couldn't be converted into silver immediately, and Shinchin, being frugal, insisted on not selling them at a low price. If buyers tried to haggle, he would argue over every penny. And every single cent obtained from the sale was used by him to perform charitable deeds in his father's name. Shinchin has now moved to a dilapidated farmhouse, and I've followed along. So, how is it, Miss Su? Does the new home meet your standards? The place is remote, but not far from the Great Hong'en Temple. I know Shinchin deliberately chose this location to make it easier for me to visit my father at him.
Remember, you're a married man. Don't let anyone snatch you up as a son-in-law at the results announcement. And whether you pass or not doesn't matter, just take it lightly. Yet Shinchin passed. Not only that, he came in second place on the list. In the Grand Hall, the Emperor bestowed a marriage. He declined the princess's hand. Originally meant to remain in the capital, he was instead sent to an impoverished county as its magistrate. I have many grievances. Why do you have to be like this? Even if you were to marry someone else, I wouldn't blame you. You're not still clinging to that promise you made to my father, are you? How stubborn. My father has already become a monk. Who cares about you now? Such a bright future. And you just throw it away like it's nothing. I've never seen anyone so foolish. He sighed helplessly, rubbing his forehead. Enough. If your mouth isn't dry from all this talking, my ears are certainly worn out from listening. I'll buy you some storybooks when we get to the county town to help you calm down, I muttered. Then, make sure they're the most scandalous ones. Jiu County was far from peaceful. Plagued by bandits and food shortages, Shinchin became even busier. Working day and night to study how to improve local crops, poring over various ancient texts, and traveling extensively to visit great rivers. No matter rain or shine, he always carries an umbrella. That is, he carries me. The people knew he was incorruptible, and his reputation grew steadily. He and I had grown accustomed to doing what married couples do in our dreams. He often demanded endlessly, leaving me with no heart to read my storybooks. 5 years have passed. The customs of Jiu County have grown increasingly simple and honest, with the people no longer suffering from hunger or cold, and banditry diminishing without active suppression. But Shinchin's health has been deteriorating. I whispered in his ear. You're pushing yourself too hard. That's why your health keeps failing. If you become too weak in bed, be careful, I might stray. Faced with my threat, he worked even harder that night. Don't worry, all my strength is spent on you, my dear. Until one day, I heard a Taoist priest kindly advising Shinchin, there is a distinction between yin and yang, my lord. If you continue to associate with that female ghost, your young energy will be exhausted, and I fear your life will not last long. Shinchin's voice was icy cold. She is my wife. The room fell silent. Only the sound of the Taoist priest's helpless sigh remained. It's time for me to be reincarnated. I could have been reincarnated as early as a year ago. It was my greed for him that harmed him. On the night of our farewell, I wept bitterly in Shinchin's embrace. He kissed the top of my head and asked what was wrong, wondering if I was upset because he had been too busy lately and had neglected me. He had never neglected me before. In these years since my death, what more could I ask for? I can't bear to leave, truly can't bear to. After drinking Meng Po's soup, all ghosts will forget their past lives and start anew. I sobbed and asked. Shinchin, will you still remember me in the next life? Shinchin gently patted my back and whispered reassuringly, I'll remember. I never forget what I've seen. Have you forgotten? I asked again. But what if I forget? He pinched my chin and kissed the corner of my mouth. It's all right. I'll find a way to help you remember. Don't cry, Bayer. It pains my heart to see you like this. That night, we did nothing but hold each other and talk until morning. We made a promise. Using the umbrella as our token, to be husband and wife again in the next life. Extra chapter. The minister's residence. A little maid was crying so hard she could barely catch her breath. I startled her from behind. Changsho, what's wrong? Changsho said intermittently, miss, it's so touching. When I went to buy storybooks for you today, I listened to a storytelling session and was moved to tears. I sat on the swing indifferently. What was so touching about it? Changsho continued crying as he spoke. The magistrate of Jiu County was named Shin Chengchen. To commemorate his deceased wife, he wrote a storybook titled Ghostly Tales of a Married Couple, imagining his wife's spirit staying with him for 5 years after her death. I love reading storybooks. Touching ones, sweet ones, heartbreaking ones. I read them all. Nowadays, ordinary stories can hardly make me cry. Unconvinced, I told Changsho to buy a copy, and I stayed up all night reading it. In the morning, when Changsho lifted the curtain, he was utterly shocked. I stubbornly insisted through my tears, I don't know why, but this storybook gives me an unusually strong sense of immersion, otherwise I definitely wouldn't be crying. Ever since reading ghostly couples' tales, I've become addicted, obsessively researching Shin Chengchen's life story. Turns out he actually died 14 years ago. That was 2 years after I was born. He was a capable and virtuous official. On the day of his funeral, the common people, dressed in mourning attire, knelt along the long street, their sobs shaking the heavens. He was also a devoted husband, who refused to marry a princess for the sake of his late wife and remained unmarried until his death. All the young ladies in the inner chambers sighed, saying that a man like Shin Lang was hard to find. Every time I learned something about Shin Chengchen, a dull ache and sourness rise in my chest, tingling and itching. I often book private rooms to listen to storytelling, never tiring of it. That day, as I left the storytelling house, I bumped into a young man. Sorry, I picked up the umbrella for him. He coldly said, it's fine, and then left. I looked at the sky and muttered quietly, there's no sign of rain today. Changsho exclaimed in surprise. Could he be the young master of the Prime Minister's family? I heard he carries an umbrella with him all year round, no matter the weather. The son of the Prime Minister, I think I've heard someone mention him before. Changsho slapped his forehead and exclaimed, Miss, isn't he your fiancé, the one 2 years younger than you? The end.